Have you ever looked at your life and thought, this is it? This is all I'll ever be? And maybe you're working a job that barely pays the bills. Maybe you've tried to start over, but every door closes in your face. Maybe you're lying awake at night, wondering how you'll feed your family tomorrow. What if I told you there was a man who slept on the floor of a public bathroom with his 2-year-old son, who had no money, no home, no degree in finance, and yet became one of the most successful stockbrokers on Wall Street? This is not fiction. This is the true story of Chris Gardner. And if his story doesn't convince you that your situation is never hopeless, nothing will. Stay with me until the end. Chris Gardner grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in a home filled with chaos. He never knew his biological father. His stepfather was violent and unpredictable. His mother, a strong woman who dreamed of a better life, was often caught between survival and suffering. As a child, Chris made himself a quiet promise. When I grow up, my children will always know who their father is, and he will be present. That promise would later become the most powerful force in his life. After serving in the Navy, Chris moved to San Francisco in his late 20s. He found work as a medical equipment salesman, going door to door at hospitals, carrying heavy bone density scanners, and trying to convince doctors to buy machines that cost thousands of dollars. The pay was inconsistent. Some months he sold nothing. His relationship with the mother of his son was falling apart. They argued constantly about money, about the future, about everything. But the hardest part was not the poverty. It was the feeling that he was running as fast as he could and going nowhere. Every morning, Chris put on his one decent suit, loaded the scanner into his car, and knocked on hospital doors. And every evening, he came home exhausted, wondering if tomorrow would be different. One afternoon, while walking through the financial district of San Francisco, Chris saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A man stepped out of a red sports car, expensive suit, confident walk, a look of someone who had figured life out. Chris couldn't help himself. He walked up to the man and asked 2 questions that would change his life forever. What do you do, and how do you do it? The man smiled. I'm a stockbroker. Chris had never considered finance. He had no degree in business, no connections on Wall Street. But something about that moment, the car, the confidence, the possibility, lit a fire inside him that nothing could put out. He thought to himself, if that man can do it, why can't I? Chris applied to a stockbroker training program at a major financial firm in San Francisco. The program was brutal to get into, but Chris was persistent. He called, he showed up, he impressed the hiring manager with his determination. He was accepted. But there was one devastating condition. The program was unpaid. For 6 months, he would work full-time, study for the licensing exam, and earn absolutely nothing. Chris took the risk. He had no choice. This was his one chance. But within weeks, everything fell apart. His girlfriend left, taking most of what little they had. His landlord, tired of late payments, locked him out. He couldn't afford daycare for his son, so he brought the boy with him, to the office, to the library, to the streets. Chris Gardner, a man training to work on Wall Street, was now homeless, with a toddler. There is a moment in Chris's story that has stayed with millions of people who've heard it. One evening, with nowhere to sleep, Chris took his son into a subway station bathroom. He locked the door. He spread a thin blanket on the cold tile floor. He held his boy close, trying to keep him warm. Someone knocked on the door. Chris pressed his foot against it, holding it shut, tears streaming down his face in silence, because he didn't want his son to wake up. In that bathroom, on that floor, Chris made a decision. Not a hopeful, optimistic decision. A desperate, furious one. I will never be in this situation again. I don't care what it takes. I don't care how hard it gets. I will build a life my son can be proud of. Every morning, Chris woke up before dawn in whatever shelter or park bench he had found. He dressed his son, dropped him off at a low-cost daycare, and walked to the financial firm in his one wrinkled suit. He studied on the bus. He practiced cold calls during lunch. He memorized stock terminology while feeding his son dinner at a church shelter. His colleagues had no idea he was homeless. They saw a man in a suit who worked harder than anyone else in the room, and Chris intended to keep it that way. What made Chris Gardner different from the thousands of other people who were struggling just like him? It wasn't talent. It wasn't luck. It was a set of principles he lived by. Principles anyone can adopt. Chris understood something most people refuse to accept. No one is coming to save you. Not the government, not your family, not a lucky break. If your life is going to change, you have to be the one who changes it. He once said something that captures this perfectly. He said that the world owes you nothing. You have to go out and earn every single thing you want. And if you're waiting for permission to start, you'll wait forever. This wasn't bitterness. It was freedom. Because once you stop waiting for rescue, you start building your own ladder. During his time in the training program, Chris faced constant doubt, not just from himself, but from people around him. Some told him he was crazy. A homeless man trying to become a stockbroker. That's not how the world works. But Chris refused to let other people's limitations become his own. He believed that if you have a dream, you have to protect it. When people who have never achieved anything tell you that you can't do it either, remember, that says everything about them and nothing about you. Chris had a practical approach to hard work. He calculated that in the training program, there were 20 trainees competing for one permanent position. That meant he didn't just need to be good, he needed to be the best. So he made more cold calls than anyone else. He arrived first, he left last. He studied on weekends while others rested. He treated every single day like a job interview. Because it was. Years later, when people asked Chris how he survived those months, he always came back to the image of that bathroom door. He said, "When you're holding a door shut with your foot, protecting your sleeping child, and you have nothing, no money, no home, no guarantee of tomorrow, you learn something about yourself. You learn that you are stronger than your circumstances." That door was the hardest thing I ever held. But it taught me that I could hold anything. That locked door became his symbol. Every obstacle after that was just another door to hold. After 6 months of training while homeless, sleeping in shelters and subway stations, Chris Gardner did what many thought impossible. He passed the licensing exam. On his first attempt. Out of 20 trainees, he was offered the one full-time position. The hiring manager told him he had never seen anyone work with that kind of intensity. Chris finally had a paycheck. He finally had a future. The day Chris signed the lease on a small apartment, nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with a kitchen and a door that locked from the inside, he sat on the floor and cried. Not because the apartment was beautiful, because his son would sleep in a bed that night. A real bed in a real home. That was all he had ever wanted. But Chris didn't stop there. He worked his way up through the financial industry, learning, networking, taking calculated risks. He became one of the top-performing brokers at his firm. Then, in 1987, he did something even bolder. He founded his own brokerage firm, Gardner Rich, with just $10,000 and a small office in Chicago. People doubted him again. A man with no Ivy League degree, no family wealth, no powerful connections, starting his own firm. But Chris had already slept on a bathroom floor. Starting a business was easy compared to that. Gardner Rich grew. It thrived. Within years, the firm was managing millions of dollars in investments. Chris Gardner, the man who once couldn't afford a meal, became a multi-millionaire. His story was published as a memoir. It was adapted into a major film. Millions of people around the world heard about the homeless father who refused to give up. But when people asked Chris what his greatest achievement was, he never talked about the money or the fame. He said, "My son grew up knowing his father. He knew I was there. That was the promise I made as a child. And I kept it." My friend, Chris Gardner's story is not just about money or Wall Street. It's about something far more important. It's about the power of refusing to accept your current situation as your final destination. Here's what most people get wrong about success. They think they need the right background, the right education, the right timing. They think the cards have to be dealt in their favor before they can play. Chris had none of that. He had a wrinkled suit, a sleeping child, and a locked bathroom door. And he built an empire. The difference was not what he had. It was what he refused to accept. So if you're watching this and feeling stuck, let me leave you with 3 things Chris Gardner's life teaches us. First, stop waiting for perfect conditions. They don't exist. Chris started his journey while homeless. You can start yours from wherever you are right now. Imperfect action beats perfect planning every single time. Second, protect your vision from people who can't see it. Not everyone will understand your dream. That's fine. Their doubt is not your truth. The only opinion that matters is the one you repeat to yourself when no one is watching. Third, make a promise and keep it. Chris promised himself his children would know their father. That promise gave him a reason to hold the door, to pass the exam, to build the firm. Find your promise, the thing bigger than your comfort, and let it pull you forward. Chris Gardner slept on a bathroom floor with his son. He had no money, no home, no degree in finance. And he became a multi-millionaire.